there is at last a debate, not about global warming, but about our net zero goals in this country, whether they're achievable and whether they're actually affordable. And I was very surprised. Philip Hammond, Lord Hammond, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, he was really being very, very frank about it. He said we're being systematically dishonest, and there is a cross-party disease. And what he means is we've just not been telling the people about how much it's actually going to cost and whether it can really work. And one of those areas is, of course, electric cars. Now, of course, they're high performance, they're wonderful, just they don't drive very far. There are very few charging points, and they cost a fortune. They're great for the rich, they're great for the people who've been super successful, but for ordinary folk, they're almost beyond measure in terms of expense. And if we go down this route, that after 2030, there'll be no new cars built with internal combustion engines, aren't we just giving the market over to the Chinese? Well, one man who was an absolute mega enthusiast for the electric car is Quentin Willson, former Top Gear host. And yes, I mean, you love electric cars, Quentin, but just deal with that point first. You know, China is ready to produce electric cars on a huge scale. They'll be a lot cheaper than anything else we can produce. They'll be produced in environmental conditions that'll be far less stringent than we would. Aren't we just giving the world over to China?
No, what we're trying to do is to make our motor industry to compete with China. Knowing that I was coming on the show tonight, I spoke to Grant Shapps, who told me that the 2030 deadline is fixed, that the ZEV mandate is fixed bar a few tweaks. I spoke to JLR, who said that they are completely behind the 2030 deadline and the mandate. And we heard the SMMT yesterday on Radio 4 saying they too are completely behind this. So where this story has come from, that the motor industry is under threat, is wrong. We cannot allow a huge tirade of cars coming in from China. We must make them ourselves, and we must be world leading in what we do. And that's why it's so important to have these targets to make sure our motor industry is competitive. Look at the JLR battery factory, Tata investing 4 billion. Look at the 6 billion being spent by the UK charging industry. And Grant Shapps wanted me to tell you that that battery factory would have gone to Spain had we not had those targets. So this is just a false narrative. We can be massively competitive on the global scale if we've got this certainty, and investors know that we are going to make our motor industry world leading. And 80%, Nigel, of the cars make in this country go to Europe. A third of the cars off the production line so far in 2023 have been electrified. If you want to wipe that all away and surrender the market to the Chinese, that's what will happen. So
I worry about pricing. I worry about pricing, Quentin. But a practical question. This summer, for the first time in years, we had to fire up coal-fired power stations. We had to do it because we have a massive over-reliance on wind. Where is the electricity going to come from by 2030 for all of these cars?
Well, look, we've got 46% coming into the grid, which is renewables. And again, it's world record stuff, and that's gone from a tiny percentage.
When the wind blows.
Yeah, look, it's intermittent. We know this, and you will always need fossil fuels to power parts of the grid. But National Grid tell me, and I've spoken to them at all, that they will have enough power to do this because they've got offshore wind, another 4 gigawatts coming in. And so we will have a mix of all these different power sources, nuclear, solar, wind,
Not by
hydro.
2030.
Well, how do you know that? Are you a fortune teller, Nigel?
We will not have fresh nuclear power by 2030. You know that, I know that. But Quentin, you still, just sort of in conclusion, you still believe that 2030 is an achievable target?
Yeah, I do. And I'm here in France. I've driven here in an electric car. I charged 3 times. I'm not on fire. I'm not by the hard shoulder. And your listeners need to understand, or your viewers need to understand, that the narratives they're hearing on the mainstream media about electric cars are broadly wrong. And there's 1.2 million people out there who happily drive them every day, and it's their voices we should listen to.
Well, we listen to all voices here on GB News, including your enthusiasm for electric cars, and thank you for joining me. Well.